Hello and welcome to Builders. Today we're joined by Eva van der Brugge, CEO of Pandria, a platform transforming how organizations approach feedback and performance management. Pandria uses AI to elicit in-the-moment, highly personalized feedback from peers directly through tools like Slack and Microsoft Teams. This makes performance reviews faster, fairer, and more relevant. With a background in psychology, Eva combines insights into human behavior with tech innovation to create a culture of continuous growth. Let's dive into her journey and see how she's redefining performance management in modern HR. Eva, welcome to Builders. Thanks so much for joining us. How's it going?
Thank you so much, Lee. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thank you for that kind introduction. Really nice. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Let's start by discussing your journey, basically. So, a background in psychology, like I said. How did your career evolve to blend, essentially human behavior insights, right, with technology innovation? What happened before Pandria?
Yeah, well, the fact that I'm now working on designing conversations that make people talk better together um, uh, helps me kind of make sense of the rather diverse choices that I made in the past. It's easy to connect the dots looking back, as they say. So, indeed, schooled as a psychologist, but also as a statistician, and got a PhD in kind of argumentation and logic. Quickly realized that the academic world wasn't necessarily the dynamic sector I was hoping for. So I moved
Right.
into strategy consulting at McKinsey, where I also worked on HR transformation. So that has been kind of an ongoing thread. Then decided I would like to be more in the startup sector, but joined kind of an innovation platform in the sustainability space. Got my feet wet a little bit, right? Did my toes in, and realized after a few years that it was time to make my own mistakes. So over the past few years, I've combined two things. Most importantly, I have been basically working as an advisor and investigator for a market leader in organizational social safety. So really dove deep into what happens when culture goes bad, basically, and spoke to hundreds of people who got stuck at work because they weren't talking. And that was one of the key drivers for me in starting this,
Right.
as well as building a consumer startup, which was incredibly fun, but also made me realize how much I wanted to build my next venture in the B2B space in a kind of a scalable way.
Super. And what else then kind of drove you? You spoke about certain parts that drove you to kind of found and start Pandria. What was it? That kind of the real aha moment for you that kind of you realized there's something to be done here.
Yeah, well, definitely the problem of performance management was very, very clear to me through my past role, right? So performance management is very, very often done poorly, simply because managers lack skills and exchanging feedback is awkward, right? So this problem is incredibly pervasive. Up to 95% of managers are dissatisfied with their system, and that was clear indeed from the role that I had. But then, of course, with this wave of generative AI that came on board basically last year, I realized there's a real opportunity here to apply my skills in a much more scalable way than I could do if I was helping people individually. So there was kind of I don't know that startups are built around an aha moment often, because you validate and you learn and you pivot. So there was a kernel of wanting to help people exchange better conversations. And that kind of, I'd say, morphed into this step by step.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I think you're right in what you're saying. But before founding Pandria, you had roles. You mentioned ex McKinsey, for example, but you've had roles at both startups and these kind of large organizations. And how did these experiences kind of shape the vision that you had or that you do have for Pandria?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? McKinsey is known for being a very high performance culture. And of course, they invest very heavily in their talent, because that is really their only asset, right? Alongside their kind of knowledge and expertise. And so I think when you start your career in an organization like that, the standard is set for just how normalized it can be to talk about growth and performance very frequently. So to then hit the real world, right?
Exactly,
And it's the contrast is so severe that I think that shock to the system also is a kind of interesting driver in itself. I'd say.
And yeah, I guess it's a kind of like the stark contrast between the larger companies like McKinsey, for example, having this as kind of a way of working set up and everything, a very good structure in place, and then in the real world, as you term it as well, where these systems probably don't even exist. You're just getting started and kind of advising here. And then Pandria's approach is deeply rooted in like creating this continuous, these continuous feedback loops. Then, right? Was there a particular moment or event during your career so far that made you realize that such a transformation in performance management was needed? I'm talking like particularly about experience at McKinsey and the like. What was it like? Was there these specific moments?
I can think of two moments, in fact. The first definitely was, I think at McKinsey, where, coming out of an academic context where barely any feedback is exchanged besides on deep content, right? Receiving quite harsh feedback, but in a very safe and trusted environment where you know that the other person is trying to help you succeed, was definitely, I would say, transformational, because it showed me that, it's such an incredible cliche that feedback is a gift, but truly, someone putting their faith in you by breaking kind of the, easygoing, we're all working along here expectation, and really giving you, simply, this is not good enough, but I know you can do better. That's that level of trust. I think it's really special, and it really deepens your connection as coworkers. Then secondly, definitely, I would say the experience that I had advising in organizations where culture was truly broken. Escalations had taken place that could have been avoided had people just talked to each other. Very costly conflicts, even Me Too cases that could have been avoided had problematic behavior not been left to go on.
Yeah. And what if you were to kind of in kind of so many words kind of talk about what the core kind of problem that you aim to solve when you created Pandria, how would you explain this?
So existing tools for performance management have the features in place in theory, right? Most large organizations use software that allows you to nominate peers and managers to give you feedback, and for you to give feedback to them. The problem is nobody pushes those buttons unless your HR person chases you, right? When the review is due, and you see this huge peak in activity in these software tools where people just go off their memory of what they happen to have seen the last 3 years. And the problem there is that leads to bias, right? Recency bias, but also kind of inside baseball games. I'm just nominating you because I know you'll be nice to me. It also leads to people perpetuating the images that they already have about people. And that unfairness, that perceived unfairness rather, is a really strong contributor to loss of talent in organizations. So beyond just the time wasted, which is estimated by Gallup to be around $3,500 per employee per year, just simply filling out the relevant forms about each other. But on top of that loss of talent, contributions to burnout, loss of well-being, that is a problem that can be avoided with better tooling that is more intuitive, more in the moment, and that truly makes it easy, as opposed to you having to take the initiative.
Yeah. Really interesting. You're talking about kind of that business value side of things there, which we'll get back to hopefully a bit later. But if we were to talk about Pandria's kind of mission and vision, you're using AI to provide this kind of personalized feedback in real time, right? We spoke about kind of integrations with a lot of major tools such as Slack and Teams and whatnot. What made you focus on real time feedback as opposed to kind of these traditional and scheduled reviews, right? That might happen 1 to 2 months or 3 months down the line, for example.
Well, Lee, I'm pretty sure that you can reflect on this just from your own day-to-day work, right? How often does it happen that you come out of a meeting and you think, "Ooh, I feel like that could have been handled differently." How often do
Yep.
you think that, but then don't document that thought?
Absolutely.
That happens a few times a day, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yep.
not by any stretch do we want to reach out to people a few times a day. But even if you would document that once or twice a week and then be coached in the moment on how to be constructive and how to really build on your observation and connect it to the person's strengths and growth goals, in a super easy way. The strength of your review by the end of the cycle, if you connect all those dots and basically automatically synthesize all of that information built up over time, will be just exponentially better than something that you can answer in 3 generic questions just going off your memory, right? So not only does it increasing the frequency and in the moment kind of questioning does not only improve the kind of amount of data that you have, but it also increases the quality a lot.
And yeah, we're talking also about kind of AI's role here, and you're talking about also like synthesizing all of this these data points essentially along the way. I think you hit the nail on the head really when you said how often does one come out of a meeting and think of something that they should jot down, come back to later maybe, or kind of mention or feedback on, and actually forget to. I'm very, very guilty of that myself, I must admit. But what other ways do you think, or what role is AI playing in enhancing this process in particular?
Yeah, so I'd say that, basically right now anyone can build a chatbot, right? That's not very differentiated at all. So we, I would say, employ both kind of non-generative AI machine learning to ensure that we reach out to the right person in exactly the right moment. And we keep improving our learning so that we continuously optimize for that. But then also basically using a proprietary system to design kind of conversational experiences that are very safe and reliable, and that basically imbue a model with the kind of structured coaching that a human coach would have, placing on top of that kind of a meta level reasoning of, okay, these are the kinds of experiences that we would like this tool to offer now. How can we allow the user to flexibly and intuitively navigate those so that they are always served with the right journey at the right time?
Yeah.
And then kind of underneath that, employing kind of AI learning to constantly be, we say listening out. The tool doesn't listen in, but basically we're looking for signals, for example, of your preferred communication style, your kind of personality at work, so that we can feed those types of aspects back into how we reach out to you, what kind of questions we ask. So those are kind of the building blocks.
Got to. It becomes much more personalized, tailored to the individual in that sense.
Absolutely, yes.
And I think it's a super interesting, really, I think, because some of the studies that I was looking at here as well beforehand showed that, employees not just receiving feedback, but this kind of regular feedback or kind of at the right time, right? They're 3 to 4 times more likely, probably more, let's face it, more likely to be engaged at work. But I think only 1/5, so around 20% of employees say that they get feedback that motivates them. So like how is Pandria kind of address it or helping to kind of address this gap by integrating this kind of continuous feedback into like everyday workflows?
Yeah, so indeed, as you say, one part of that definitely is asking the right questions that link to your growth path, right? Making it really relevant to you personally. And we learn from basically the HR context that we have, for example, through connecting to your existing HR systems, but also just basically what's in your calendar, right? We connect to your calendar. However, asking those questions and collecting that feedback is, of course, only the beginning. Really, what you want is to create accountability so that those things are actually addressed. So after having a 2-minute conversation where Pandria coaches you to formulate a bit of feedback, it will then say, look, Lee, you have your one-on-one with Eva coming up in 2 weeks. Shall I put it on the calendar entry for you? Just this topic. Now, how much more likely are you then to discuss that? Because I'm now curious, right? What does Lee have to say about that meeting that we had?
Yeah.
Then after that, right ahead of that one-on-one meeting, it'll prompt you, would you like to practice this conversation? Because Pandria knows what I'm like. Maybe I'm very confrontational and you're a bit shy. Okay, how can we handle that? And then after that conversation, it'll say, look, did you actually deliver what you wanted to deliver? It'll also ask me, what did you hear? So is there a discrepancy between those two things? So that it can actually kind of improve its outreach and ensure that you keep that conversation going.
So it's essentially like your assistant here, right? Helping you deliver this, and you're feedbacking into this model or whatever's kind of helping you the model that's kind of telling the individual or helping the individual essentially in kind of delivering this feedback. But when it comes to, we're talking a lot about the AI, and I'm going to ask you a little bit about how you've kind of been building these or kind of teaching these assistants, let's call them, when it comes to the conversations that are to be had with the individuals. But how do you balance the AI automation here with the human touch? Because obviously this is something that's helping a human at the end of the day, perform a performance review, give feedback or whatever. How do you kind of balance those two?
Yeah, I think that is such a great question because the data that we deal with is incredibly sensitive. And so we feel that having a human in the loop when it comes to ensuring that we only share what the end user is ready to share, right? This should never become some sort of gossip platform where you just throw, things over the fence. But also having a human in the loop when it comes to basically, actual performance evaluation and review. We do not believe that AI should be used to basically compare people's performance just independently. We don't think the technology is ready, but even if we did think that, the upcoming EU regulation wouldn't even allow that, right? HR tech, use of AI in HR tech is considered kind of the highest tier of scrutiny in that regulation also. So that is definitely very much important. We're also working with some advisors to ensure that we build in kind of traceability and explainability aspects as well, especially as we are learning about your personality. We never want that to be some sort of, dark magic black box where it feels like Pandria knows me, but how, right? So at any point, we want you to be able to ask, okay, so how did you come by that information, or what makes you say that, Pandria, right? Yeah.
And how tell us a little bit more about how this kind of how it all kind of fits together, how it works in terms of the data that you're feeding into the system, the model, presumably that's kind of augmenting this person who's giving this feedback. How does it work? How does all the data kind of get collected, fed into this for this to be able to assist the person at the end of the day?
Yeah, so it's a combination of things, right? So the first is we have designed these kind of conversational flows, and those are fed with some databases or models of best practice coaching as well. Then, of course, in onboarding a new customer, we basically ensure that we ingest their kind of HR context and their documentation, and their tone and their values, so that we ensure that we fit with them, right? And also, if the customer is comfortable, we ingest individual level past feedback and reviews so that we can really tailor questions for each person. So we know basically what your role is and what your expectations for your role are. Of course, we know your org chart. And then, of course, we connect with your calendar as well. So that's kind of the baseline knowledge. But then, of course, as conversations keep building up, we build this individual level database of basically memories about which we reason independently. So, at night, we basically think about what have we learned today about Lee? How is he progressing at work? And how can we ask more relevant questions for him?
Really, really interesting. I love how kind of data driven this is. But there's a lot of focus right now on how AI can transform, well, whatever industry, but we're talking performance management right here. And in fact, I think there was a Deloitte study looking at how AI. You mentioned bias earlier, recency bias and stuff like this. There was a study that predicted that AI can kind of eliminate this up to 45%, I think it was, in reviews by 2025. What metrics or outcomes have you seen that indicate that Pandria's kind of AI-driven approach is helping organizations not only kind of improve this fairness, so removing bias, but also driving employee engagement and productivity as well? Are there any success stories, for example, that you can share?
Well, in all transparency, I incorporated this company in November last year. So it's early days. We are serving first customers. So in the long term, we do expect to see an effect on basically talent retention and employee well-being also. It's just a little too soon to really report on that. But for now, the kind of lowest hanging fruit for us, of course, is very simply, do people have more feedback conversations that they experience as of higher quality? The answer clearly there is yes. What we also see is that people continue to engage and open up to the tool. So it's not something that is novel in your Slack that you think, oh, nice, here's a little bit of AI that I can chat with. People actually build up trust with this bot on an ongoing basis, which is one of our core hypotheses to that we wanted to validate first, of course. So, and then of course the time save informal review is also a major first outcome that we are very happy to be reporting on as well.
Right. Super. So like that time save, but also we're talking about kind of employee engagement, retention of employees as well as a kind of the problem that you're helping, future customers solve, of course. What is, in relation to kind of how product or kind of AI driven you are here as well, what would you say is your kind of particular differentiation here?
So as mentioned, right now, it's becoming easier and easier, right, to build chatbots. The thing really is to make that experience, as I said, reliable and predictable, but also still at the same time flexible and intuitive, right? And I believe that our system there is set up, we have kind of a unique architecture that goes much beyond basically chaining a bunch of prompts together and using perhaps some RAG and maybe tuning on a particular tone or a particular kind of circumstance to really serve that. So I would say that the combination of those three aspects that I mentioned before, so both kind of the flows, then the kind of meta-level reasoning underlying that, kind of the deep personalization per user and the self-reasoning about that is what would set us apart, because that allows us to truly understand you better and better and give you a very kind of intuitive experience.
I was going to say it's that kind of level of understanding of the individual, right? Super interesting. I'm also, just to kind of go back to the point on bias, which I think is a super interesting area here. How specifically does Pandria's AI kind of help to mitigate the bias? How does that work? Because obviously a lot of the data that's being fed in, if it's between these performance reviews that are still kind of, if they're in-person reviews, scheduled traditional reviews, essentially, there's still that bias there. How does the AI kind of help to mitigate this?
Yeah, this is really the way in which we elicit feedback. So, as mentioned, the fact that we do this in the moment already eliminates a lot of bias, because it means that you don't have to go off your memory. Because once the kind of your memory kicks in, there's kind of a blanket of kind of natural prejudice that is used, right, in human psychology.
Yes.
So when you do that in the moment, you're already more likely to go by your actual observations. Now, the way we ask questions is we basically help our customers employ kind of best practice feedback frameworks in these AI-based conversations to really ensure that they focus on what did the employee actually see, ensure that that is phrased in a way that focuses on what effect that had on the team or on the person themselves, because you basically can't argue with this fact happened. Here's how it affected me, right? You can't, that basically avoids a lot of defensiveness also. And it is um, a much less biased way of framing feedback than it would be to say, goodness, you always do this, or aren't you such a blanket personality statement. So in the way in which we ask those questions, we try to ensure as much as possible that feedback is eliminated. That bias rather is eliminated also.
No, really nice. And in building the product so far, I'm interested to hear any technical challenges, maybe even some kind of philosophical challenges that you faced in teaching the AI, for example, because this is in the context of kind of human feedback, right? There must be that kind of philosophical, but obviously you're building a tech product here, so there are those technical challenges as well. What challenges have you faced so far?
That's a fun one. So the architecture that we are building is, I'd say, relatively complex. So one of the main challenges we have, I would say, is just prioritizing, as always with early stage startups, right? Prioritizing what to build first to really deliver value first. You basically want to build a grand vision but you can't do that.
It's an
right?
easy trap to fall into, right?
Exactly.
To kind of have that big grand vision and like, okay, we're going to build all of that, but it's like, how can you add value? At the kind of soonest point possible.
Yeah, exactly. And then I would say philosophically, there are so many ethical aspects to this, right? Who gets to see what data when? Just even simply like it is in our personal values that a trust-based relationship between a bot and the end user is protected and nothing gets shared unless the user consents to that. But what if 5 people report on their boss saying, she's doing, I don't know, something really unacceptable, but none of them feels comfortable sharing? What do you do? Those types of questions, they definitely keep the conversation going in our team, I would say.
And how do you safeguard against this kind of data essentially? How do you safeguard against basically security issues here? Basically, with these individuals' kind of data points. Essentially, how do you work when it comes to security matters?
Yeah, so we certainly have had kind of the I would say multi-tenancy silos kind of in mind as we started building from the start. Now, of course, one of our key priorities as we're building and gearing up to serve larger customers is also to prove that we have done that through kind of well-known certifications. We are lucky to have on our team a founding engineer who is very, very experienced in building kind of enterprise grade B2B SaaS. So he's been able to really know and kind of share with us what in our architecture we should basically front load and not do a year from now, because it will be super hard to retrofit later and is really, really crucial to ensuring nothing leaks, which has been super helpful.
Super. And talking about Pandria's, growth and future, you've touched upon it. You're really in the early days at the moment. But what different trends in the future of work are you excited about in particular? How can you see the kind of feedback mechanisms evolving over the next decade, for example, or maybe 5 years?
Yeah, so this is interesting, right? So there's been definitely a lot of talk of basically eliminating the idea of basically backward looking evaluations altogether, right? Simply focusing on ongoing growth conversations, which seems kind of an intuitive extension of this trend of going from very hierarchical kind of top down to 360 review to then kind of the next level. However, there's also a little bit of a counter movement that shows that in the end, employees do like clarity on where do I stand? Like, does my performance meet expectations? And how is that rewarded? How even they want to know, how do I compare to my peers, right? It's a very human thing to want to do. So I think that tension is an interesting one. And I'm really excited to be there to kind of co-shape with our kind of peers in the industry, of course, how that plays out. One thing that I'm very, very interested in is basically the I'm so sorry, something just popped up on my screen.
Really?
We'll have to cut that out. I had to close a bunch of stuff. So one thing that I'm definitely very, very interested in is basically the rise of Gen Z in the workforce. This is the generation that both wants the most feedback and is absolutely unaccepting of bias and is really kind of advocates for transparency in the workplace. At the same time, the most socially anxious organization, all reports show. So they both want the most kind of input.
But they're most worried about it.
They're most worried about having conversation around it. So that'll be a really, really interesting one as well that I'm really excited to play a part in also.
Very exciting. What's your strategy to grow Pandria more broadly in HR tech? I mean, potentially beyond its kind of current application in feedback and performance management, or are you very kind of purely kind of exclusively focused on that, or do you see kind of a broader application here?
Well, certainly, of course, it is absolutely best practice to focus first, right? To make sure that you deliver a high value product in your lane first. And basically hook in your audience on that. Naturally, once we have this trust-based relationship with employees, it makes sense to coach them and help them in other aspects of their work life as well. For example, one kind of natural link might be to connect those insights to aspects of your employer academy, right? So to deliver micro learnings that are already available in your organizations based on the feedback that you're getting. Or, for example, combine the knowledge that we have with simple questions on engagement that are often asked in, pulse surveys. We could ask those, for example, on an ongoing basis in your work chat as well. But I have to say those are, as I say, in the future.
No, I see. But I mean, how there's also the point of kind of employee well-being, right? Particularly kind of with this, it's rapidly evolving trends like remote work. I mean, this is nothing new now per se, but is this something that's continuing, or you've got the kind of hybrid workforce as well? But there's a kind of increasing importance of employee well-being. Are you excited about this area of or this side of things? How do you see maybe Pandria playing a role here? Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think it all ties together, right? How you are performing at work is another side of this coin of how good do you feel at work. Very simply put, how can you show your best because you feel healthy, both physically and psychologically at work as well. Now, I think the space of well-being in the workforce is a very, very full one, where there's a lot of innovation happening right now. So I do expect some kind of consolidation there also. I think there is some sense in which when a new kind of wave of technology comes on, we all feel like, oh, but now there's AI, so we can, can basically see we can see ways to solve all sorts of problems with that.
Everyone jumps on it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm excited to see kind of what sticks in that field as well.
And if we were to talk about some personal reflections and advice as well, I mean, this is really, we're talking about like the intersection of AI and human behavior and business, of course. What advice would you offer to entrepreneurs or leaders in HR tech on navigating these dynamics? Essentially, the kind of AI and human dynamics, basically. There are philosophical kind of challenges here, like we mentioned earlier as well. Any pieces of advice here?
At the risk of giving incredibly kind of well trodden startup cliches, I think especially in this field, it is so important to talk to customers and users early, right? To ensure that just because you can build it and AI could advise or could do it, you're not building something that in fact might create problems in the workplace or that simply no one will use because people aren't comfortable with it. I think that holds in any space, but it holds especially in these very sensitive spaces.
And Pandria is in the very kind of early stages, really, of its existence. What are your current and future plans for the company? This is obviously a product that can be used across any type of organization, of course. But do you have any any niche that or type of organizations that you're focusing on? Any markets that you're currently focusing on as well? What's happening here?
So indeed, you say can be used in any type of organization. That's true in theory, but definitely in practice, we are most well equipped to serve kind of knowledge workers, right? People who actually very simply use chat on a daily basis.
Yep. And this is why you have the kind of Slack and Teams, integration and everything, right? Naturally.
Yes, indeed. We also primarily want to focus basically grow into serving larger organizations, simply because we feel that there it is perhaps somewhat harder to maintain a strong culture, basically an open, transparent feedback culture. Also, because the more data we have within an organization, of course, the better our tool can tailor and advise.
Exactly.
And then we are looking, of course, for more progressive organizations also that are willing to take such a kind of innovative tool on board.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I was just thinking when you were talking about the the conversations that go on in these whatever internal communication tools, Slack we've mentioned. I mean, there's such a vast amount of information, data there, right? Just direct messages, even in threads and everything, and based on individuals here. I think it's a really, really interesting tool that you're building here, and the integration with these communication tools as well just means that your tool is able to be fed vast amounts of data that can really be used to improve.
And that's true. I do want to clarify though, Lee, that we do not read all of your Slack conversations, so we only access the direct conversation that you have with Pandria. Of course, as we have more users within an organization, we learn more about what work is like at that particular place. Yep.
Got you. And so close to a year in, right? In Pandria's journey. Is there, what does the next year look like for Pandria? How many employees are there in the company at the moment, and what's the plan for the year ahead?
We right now have 4 team members, and then a number of kind of part-time people that on a contract basis, basically. We hope to close a fundraising round soon, and then of course expand the team and really ensure that we get ready to serve enterprises. That is our goal as well. Of course, getting ready for basically a public launch in the kind of chats app marketplaces. So ensuring that anyone who wants to can try out Pandria simply by going to the Slack or Teams marketplace and searching for feedback and finding us and onboarding themselves.
Really nice.
A short term.
We might have to give it a try ourselves here at Proxify. It'd
Well,
be super interesting. I think just from the point of view I said to you earlier, I can be very guilty of throughout any given time period, whether it's a quarter or a month or a week or whatever, a day, like you say, I can be guilty of forgetting to jot things down, and then obviously they don't pop to mind, right, when you most need them. So I think it's a really exciting product, I must say.
Thank you.
But is there, before I start wrapping up, Eva, is there anything else you'd like to share? Any exciting news or anything in particular about the product?
Honestly, I can't think of anything. So maybe that's. I think it'll be very exciting to basically launch this out in the open more publicly, and give it a big splash when it's available to the public.
Super. We look forward to hearing about it. And yes, Eva, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing. Pandria's journey so far. It's reshaping this kind of feedback culture. I think your insights into nurturing these kind of meaningful connections, right, for individuals, how important this feedback, continuous feedback is for them, has been really, really inspiring, eye-opening as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very much for the opportunity, and thanks for the great questions. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. And to our listeners, please check out Pandria to learn more about this innovative platform, and stay tuned for more Builders episodes soon. Until then, keep innovating and keep building. We'll see you soon.